As many of you know, I attended Hot Chips a couple of months ago, and the truth is I attended not just because I wanted to, but because of backers in the industry who couldn't make it themselves and kind of wanted someone there as an avatar. They picked me. They wanted me to report back on things you just can't get from online videos, like this one, for instance, where Intel only paints the most rosy parts of the Hot Wings talk. Of course, I recorded the entire 30-minute conversation, including some pretty embarrassing moments, I thought, for Intel, so check that out. Of course, eventually I was asked by a backer, so what is the mood in the room? How are people feeling, right? Are they happy? Are they positive? Does it seem like things are going well? And I reported back that things were overwhelmingly positive, very much so with ARM employees, but especially with Intel engineers. Surprisingly, at least to me, Intel engineers seem to be in the greatest spirits of any of the engineers there. Maybe it's because they were eating lunches paid for by their own company. I don't know. But so many tech tubers, including me, tend to paint a dark picture for Intel currently. Or at least we seem to all be suggesting it often. I know I certainly am. In fact, a lot of people think I'm too harsh on Intel. I was recently at a dinner party and someone said, "Hey, I checked out your channel, and I don't think there's probably an Intel processor within a mile of you at all times," right? To which I told him my main rig over here has an Intel processor. And in fact, my main laptop that I use for editing on the go also has an Intel processor. I have nothing against Intel fundamentally, and I know some channels definitely do. I just have to be hard on them because it's impossible not to these days when Intel is so often dishonest or wrong about their roadmaps and AMD is so often right. AMD said Zen 1 would beat Broadwell IPC, and it definitely did. They said core counts and performance would go up year over year, and it has. They said they would have better security, and they did, and their CPUs have TDP ratings that are much more genuine, whereas Intel, it's always a guessing game of how much energy is this power hog gonna consume, or when's the next security vulnerability coming out to lower my performance just that little bit more. And then meanwhile, God knows their roadmaps have been a complete joke. Everyone knows you have no idea when anything they say will come out will actually come out. And so it's just impossible for me to trust Intel at face value anymore, that they say they will be competitive in a year. And yet, why was Intel so smug at Hot Chips? And why do they continue to come off of so smug in public right now? Is there a chance they really are cooking up some stuff that can right their ship so soon? Well, I guess when it comes to face value, Intel is working on some cool stuff recently, with Sunny Cove cores providing impressive IPC gains in Ice Lake and Lakefield packages. And we also have some very likely true leaks of Intel bringing PCIe 5.0 in a couple years, and 4.0 actually in 2020. So I guess on face value, Intel is doing some interesting stuff. Maybe it's not aloofness like I thought it was a month ago. Maybe it is smugness. And recently I was reached out to by some sources, finally, that definitely have connections at Intel that point to some pretty interesting arguments for why Intel may be able to bring some real firepower to the table soon. So you know what? That's what this video is about. One source in particular was adamant that this is not an act, that Intel is acting genuinely confident, both because they need to look good, but also because behind closed doors, they are taking things seriously. And this assault isn't going to come on one front. No, Intel is a massive company with tons of resources working on multiple projects. This assault on AMD is going to come from multiple directions if what I've been told is to be believed. But let's pretend it can all be believed. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about a best case scenario for once. For once, let's give Intel the benefit of the doubt and look at their upcoming architectures and talk about what they could be doing that could give AMD a lot of trouble. And spoiler alert to the later part of the video, I think Golden Cove could be one hell of a punch. Before I get directly into the leak, I need to explain again what one of my Whispers videos are, just so everyone understands ahead of time. This is not confirmation that anything that Intel's working on will pan out well or come out exactly when they say it will or cost any certain price, right? They can change anything at the last minute and things can go wrong. And after all, there's no way Intel could be screwing up so many things in the past 2 years without thinking they were going to go well, and then things went bad at the last minute. So even if things look good now from what I'm about to show you, they could change. But the idea of a Whispers video is to give you an idea of what they're planning, and then me talk about what it would mean if this all came true. When I talked about Zen 3, the point of that Whispers of Zen 3 video was Zen 3 is coming sooner than expected, which is correct. I was right about that. And that there isn't some Zen 2 Plus, that AMD is really bringing another punch that's bigger than a Plus upgrade sooner than anyone expects. And then, of course, the Comet Lake Whispers was about, no, Intel isn't bringing 10 nanometer or anything great in 2020. It's just 2 more cores yet again, a 10 core, just like they went to 6 and then 8 cores. And it's going to be the same bloody Skylake architecture with security problems and frankly, not enough to fight Zen 2 or Zen 3. And then, of course, the Arcturus leak telling you AMD is working on a new type of Vega for the professional market, that GCN's here to stay for compute. Of course, recently the Navi leak showing it's coming sooner than expected, and it should compete with the 2080 Ti. This leak here, Whispers of Golden Cove, is talking about what Intel is trying to accomplish by 2021. It might not pan out this well, but it could. And the reason it could is why I've said before that AMD, while firing on all cylinders still, while not getting lazy because of their recent success, isn't getting lazy because they're still paranoid. And if what I'm about to show does come true, it makes a lot of sense why AMD is paranoid. But let's get to it. And I really think it's really 3 phases. You know, Intel would attack AMD pretty much 2020. And the first phase would be a good 10 nanometer node, and at the same time, the ability to use mini nodes. So Intel is designing future architectures that can use multiple nodes. And I really understand why some people will find this surprising based on a lot of recent videos from other people, but what I am told, and this has been reiterated multiple times, is that Intel really does intend to fix the 10 nanometer node and really get it working. They really do intend to bring out 28 core Ice Lake server chips and higher, which could be, a doubling of 28, another 56 core double chip. But they really do intend to bring this, and they intend to bring this on a 10 nanometer node that's fixed. So think about it. Right now, 10 nanometer in Ice Lake mobile processors gets you almost the same clock speeds for boost that their 14 nanometer plus plus gets, but 14 nanometer plus 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 just came out, which is even better, Comet Lake, and their base clocks on 10 nanometer right now are horrible, but they plan to fix that. And if they do, consider that Ice Lake will have reduced power consumption, 18% higher IPC, and with similar clock speeds to what's out now on 14 nanometer, that would actually be a pretty big upgrade. They didn't expect the base clocks to be so low. They really were surprised. And so they think they will be able to fix it. And the last thing I would say is that although this isn't confirmation, they can certainly put any of these future architectures after Sunny Cove or potentially Sunny Cove on 14 nanometer as well. I have zero information, but this is something, and I saw this at Hot Chips in several presentations, this is something Intel plans to do from now on, build architectures that will work on all nodes. So yeah, this is probably one of the biggest contradictory things I'm reporting here. But let's move on to the second phase of Intel's assault. A Pincer attack in 2020. Not just a surprising ability to use Ice Lake on server, but also an upgraded Tiger Lake and mobile. Will they flood cheap 14 nanometer on desktop? First of all, Intel can't afford to drop prices on their, I would argue by terms we've been using the previous years, golden sample level 14 nanometer plus yields on desktop. They can make as many of these as they want, and this has been reported multiple times what they plan to bring out. We are talking about $500 5.2 gigahertz 10 cores. They could have done this a long time ago, guys. 6-core 12-thread i5s for $200 or cheaper if need be, and $100 4-core 8-thread i3s. And there's been a lot of rumors that there will be Pentiums for $80 that still have hyperthreading, just like you see now, where there's quad-core Pentiums and quad-core i3s. And guys, remember, the worst yields should be able to maintain above 4.4 gigahertz. And I mean, really, this isn't going to be an issue for Intel. They can bring out 5 gigahertz across the board for i7s through i9s and just bring their, again, quote-unquote bad yields above 4.4 gigahertz to the $100 to $200 price point. That is trouble for AMD when they can afford now to continue to drop prices. Their capacity problems should be done by Q1 2020. But it doesn't stop there, because this will be at the same time Tiger Lake is launching. And Tiger Lake is supposed to be a upgrade again. Look, Intel's on 10 nanometer, and I know the yields aren't good yet, but once they fix them, they're not done. They're really iterating here. We're talking above 5% IPC gains, PCIe 4.0, and base clocks that are better than 14 nanometer plus, and possibly up there 14 nanometer plus. So multiply it, right? Let's say it's 10% higher IPC for Tiger Lake, or let's just say 5%. Let's be conservative, right? If you multiply what Ice Lake is now, which will be conservative, I know Intel says 18%, but let's just call it 15% higher IPC for Ice Lake. If you multiply 1.15 by 1.05, you get a 21% roughly IPC gain over Skylake. These quad cores, if they can hit their 14 nanometer clock speeds with 20% higher IPC than what we have now, I don't know that Zen 3 can compete with that. Even, I mean, probably with higher core counts, but when it comes to those ultra thin ultrabooks, no, I don't know. I think they maintain. And in fact, their lead over Zen 3 may be bigger than what's going on with Zen 2 right now and Ice Lake. So this is the pincer attack of 2020. And I guess the last thing I will say, though, is that, again, Tiger Lake has been reported from other people to be really powerful, to have up to double the gaming performance in its iGPU, which is a problem for AMD, and that whether or not they bring 10 nanometer to desktop, it doesn't really matter when they're agnostic, and their main concern is mobile and server. Okay, but let us get to the third part of the attack, and this is really what I'm talking about, right? Whispers of Golden Cove, which will be utilized in Sapphire Rapids. And Golden Cove, and I've actually gotten this from multiple sources, there's a lot of people talking about Sapphire Rapids in particular that utilizes Golden Cove. This really sounds to me like a Sandy Bridge moment here. At least I literally have a quote saying this is bigger. This is going to be the biggest upgrade since the Ivy Bridge days. Multiple people saying just wait. And I know that my source said 10%, but in other emails that I can't show, he actually said that it could easily be up to 20%. So again, think about how bad this could get for AMD. 1.15 times 1.05 was bad enough, but this is supposed to come out early 2021. So add another, let's say, 15% increase. We're now up to a 39% IPC bump over Skylake in early 2021. And I think that's enough to stay above Zen 3. And I do not believe Zen 4 is coming out till late 2021. And man, AMD will want to get that out as soon as possible. Anyways, though, to be clear, Sapphire Rapids is PCIe 5.0 DDR5. I've been told, and this was a direct quote from an email as well, that it has an entirely revamped power delivery system, and that he really can't say more, because if he gives even a little bit of details, the source will know that other people will know who told him, right? Or who told me. And also further cache improvements. So I guess the biggest thing then is just also that they really are targeting higher core counts with Sapphire Rapids. what I've been told from emails and is that this will have higher core counts potentially than Zen 3 and 40% higher IPC. And this has been reported by other people as well on Twitter, other people who are used to leaking things. So this really is actually backed up by some other people who are known to leak things. It sounds like Sapphire Rapids will have higher core counts and really be trouble for Zen 3. Now, maybe Zen 4 will destroy it. I don't know. But it really sounds like, or at least, again, at least internally at Intel, they're confident they can at least have free reign with Sapphire Rapids versus Zen 3 for half a year before Zen 4 can get out. They're confident in that. And the last thing I will say is just remember one more time, this is planned for, I have several emails here that say 10/7 nanometer. They're sure 10 nanometer will be fixed by 2021, ready to go, that they'll be using it at multiple fabs. And if they need to, they hope to be on 7 nanometer. And there is decent confidence they might be on 7 nanometer by 2021. It's just going to depend. But again, these future Coves, especially Golden Cove, is built to be node agnostic. 10 or 7 nanometer on server, possibly 10 nanometer on laptop, and then they bring it to 14 nanometer. Who knows what they'll be on? 14 nanometer plus, 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 plus. If they have to, they'll just put it all on 14 nanometer, right? They're building architectures with 40% higher IPC to work on multiple nodes. This is the assault. You know, surprisingly, they will fix 10 nanometer, and then they will hit a pincer attack of Tiger Lake and 14 nanometer, dirt, cheap cores hitting the market in 2020, and then they will hit hard with a, they think, Sandy Bridge moment in 2021. So yeah, that's the information I have, and this really would be quite a scary assault on AMD. But what do I think about all this? What do I think about all this if it is true? Well, I think it's a lot, and it took me some time to digest all of the info and put together this rather large, some might argue over cumbersome video, and I would encourage everyone who watches to take some time to digest it themselves, because there's a lot. But what I do think is that, like I said at the beginning, I cannot take all of this at face value. I know that this comes from people working within Intel, and that's just not good enough for me to trust it will all come true, because you could have some people working on the fab say 10 nanometers coming on time and we are going to fix it, but then you could also have the engineers working on Willow Cove not achieve their goals. And there is evidence that this is going on, by the way, that not everything is roses inside Intel. Yes, I just made the most optimistic argument I could for Intel on purpose to make sure everyone understands that Intel might turn things around sooner than everyone expects. But not all of the sources within Intel are saying good things. There are major issues right now with Comet Lake. Its internal power regulation has required a new tap out, and that has pushed it back. Most likely a quarter, maybe more. I mean, yes, they'll try to squeeze this in as a paper launch in Q1, but it could come out beginning Q3. That would mean the 9900K was faced to fight 12 and 16 core Zen 2 all on its own. And their only other options here is two things. They're going to try to pull up Rocket Lake as soon as possible, which would be pretty funny, I think, if they had the successor to Comet Lake come out on desktop just a quarter or two after Comet Lake. So I find that unlikely, but they're trying to pull it up as much as possible. And also, they're going to drop prices on i7 select not well selling i7s as much as they can, and there will probably be up to a $50, actually it's not shown here, price drop across the board pretty soon if this doesn't work. So do not buy any of these processors right now. Intel is using their quote-unquote financial horsepower to try to make up for shortcomings. And I guess the last thing I have to say about this is, as impressive as Comet Lake sounds, even if it came out in Q2, by then AMD is planning a speed refresh, and we know how much faster those yields could be. But that's another video. Brings me to something else. Intel's biggest problem right now is actually perception. If they wouldn't have had side channel and netcap, maybe things would have been different. Probably not, but maybe. But those are really the things that I'm told from my server contacts that broke the camel's back. They're done. I have multiple contacts saying they're done with Intel for the next 5 years, that they want to move to AMD, and they are. And that's the thing. Ice Lake server is not coming until probably late next year, maybe mid 2020. And by then, Zen 3 will be rolling out. And look, I think a server Ice Lake chip will make up for a lot of the deficit Intel has right now, but I don't think it's enough to beat Zen 3 at all. And maybe Sapphire Rapids can crush Zen 3, but that's another year and a half from now. That's a year and a half of AMD's getting more free reign, and all of these security vulnerabilities, I'm told they're just switching early 2020, that everyone's switching to Epic 2, and they're excited about Zen 3 coming soon. So I'm not sure how much Sapphire Rapids matters. Now, it'll keep a lot of their existing customers, but in terms of the people who've already decided to switch, which is a lot of people so far, I'm not sure how much that will alleviate those problems that they've just had. It's just over. People don't trust their security anymore, even if they fix it. It would take a few years of solid security, no more problems on their new products, and I guess some really good salesmen to convince them it's not going to happen again for the damage that's been done to be mitigated. So the second thing I think Intel needs to worry about is, even if Sapphire Rapids and Golden Cove are this perfect Sandy Bridge moment they say it's going to be, will that matter when AMD's moving to 6 nanometer and 5 nanometer chiplets behind AMD? And AMD will be on 5 nanometer by 2020, late 2021. They will be on 5 nanometer. So I worry that in this quest to make the ultimate IPC architecture, again, the ultimate mega monolithic die that can crush even AMD's chiplets, it's not going to matter when AMD's reinvented the wheel. I don't really have that much more to add to this point, except that it doesn't really matter, how good this new architecture is if it can't scale as well as AMD can scale on 5 nanometer with whatever Zen 4 is. I mean, AMD's changed the game, and I've heard no suggestions that Intel's changing the game yet. Their 3D stacking with Lakefield's impressive, but that all seems to be low power. The money's in server, so that's something else to be concerned about, even if all of these things Intel's working on come true and succeed. And the last thing I would worry about with Intel is this. I worry they're fighting the wrong war. Everything I'm hearing, and again, we'll talk about Z, that's its own thing that's interesting, but at least when it comes to core architectures, everything I'm hearing is that Intel's trying to take on AMD and destroy, their core advantage they have right now, which they should be, but it's like, the future is semi-custom. The future is RISC-V. Do you really want to focus on AMD's x86 architecture, kind of with like a tunnel vision, when you know that the game might be about to change again? And in terms of AMD, that's something they need to worry about, but AMD is semi-custom. I have no doubt they might come out with their own RISC-V products in a couple years, and they can just combine those with Radeon graphics, make a RISC-V APU, or add a RISC-V chip with a x86 chip. I mean, AMD has options with chiplets in their semi-custom business model. It doesn't seem like Intel's going semi-custom here. It seems like they're just big enough that they can make everything and hope some of them succeed. And I just don't know that that's going to work in the future. The future is semi-custom consoles, maybe leveraging some of their expertise to help HP make a custom RISC-V chip for a laptop, and then a custom x86 chip for Microsoft. And I just don't see Intel doing that. I see them building architectures with certain things like Apple in mind, but it's not the same as going fully semi-custom. And so I really worry Intel's going for this big comeback, and then when they get to it in 2021, the landscape will have changed. But yeah. So I told you the information I have about Intel. I told you how much of it I would believe, and I told you the concerns AMD should have if this comes true, and then Intel should have even if it does come true. But the last thing I want to say is something kind of ending on a positive note. What if all of this comes true, and then AMD also, goes to the moon as well, right? What if we do get a 40% or even 50% higher Intel Core architecture in 2021, used across 7 nanometer, 10 nanometer, 14 nanometer, plus, by then I guess 4 pluses. What if that does come true? And then at the same time, AMD is going to an even more advanced chiplet and probably 3D stacking system. Well, Intel's also 3D stacking for some of their mobile processors, but they have a Zen 4 that has like 15% higher IPC than Zen 3 that had 10% higher IPC than Zen 2. What if both AMD and Intel have 50% higher IPC than what Skylake was in 2021, 2022? They're all using these newer nodes. They're both 3D stacking, and it's just the most competitive times 86 landscape we've seen in our lifetime, where they're both also making great APUs as well. Because, man, that's what I'm hoping for. You know, I made a video a while ago that AMD needs a chance to milk the market for a couple years so they can get a war chest. Well, if Sapphire Rapids pans out, that's still 2021. That tells me AMD will have at least had all of 2020 to lay waste to Intel, and half of like 2019 and a lot of 2021 potentially. And by 2022, they both may be competitive again, except now AMD has enough money and Intel's firing on all cylinders. My God, imagine the competitiveness that we will see, the products we will see, and the price points that will finally be reasonable again. And let me remind you, Intel will be making graphics cards, and I will have a video about that, and they will be competing with potentially ARM and a few others that I don't want to mention that are also potentially working on graphics cards as well. What if we had the most competitive Intel and AMD in history, RISC-V creating new levels of competitiveness for architectures, including NVIDIA, who I know is working on RISC-V chips, by the way. And then we also just had like a 6-way GPU war. That's what I'm looking forward to in 2022. I hope Intel succeeds. I hope they get their ship in order, and I hope AMD keeps their ship in order. And I hope what we see is the coolest PCs we've ever seen in our lifetimes in a few years. Because think of how different things were 3 years ago. Think of what things look like. It was $1,700 for an Intel 10 core, and AMD was falling apart. And now, my God, the competition in 2019 is nuts. I think 3 years from now, things will be even crazier, and I certainly hope so. Good luck, Intel. I wish you well, and I wish AMD well, keeping up with whatever you got coming in 2021. Thank you for watching this video. It was incredibly long. This is entirely fan-supported. Despite all the information in this video, I doubt any of the websites will be reporting this, and if they do, you know, thank you for finally reporting on some of my leaks for once. But yeah, if you like this type of content, please support me on Patreon. Listen to Broken Silicon. Listen to Die Shrink if you're on Patreon. And tell me what more content you guys want. And I'll enjoy seeing your thoughts on these bombshells in the comments. All right, peace.